begin my story tonight by confessing something to you all you probably don't know about me. I have TB. Did you know that I have TB? Yeah, I've had it for a long time. In the trade, it's called teacher behavior. There's something I was cautioned about from time to time when I was teaching. It's teacher behavior. We've got to do better than that. We can't tolerate that right now. Well, I'm going to exhibit a little bit of teacher behavior. Like Sue, I've taught reading for years and years and years, and I think Sue would probably agree with me that when you teach reading, you want to get rid of the roadblocks in the reading before the students actually read it. Vocabulary, syntax, grammar, punctuation, idioms, expressions, whatever it might be. So I'm going to remove what could be a possible roadblock in my story. A little bit of TB, if I may indulge myself. Many, many years ago, before the textile industry came into being, textiles were made largely at home and largely by women. And they had a big rod called a distaff, spelled D-I-S-T-A-F-F, which held a big bowl of flax, for example. And then down here they had what was called a spindle. And the thread that was made from the flax would travel down to the spindle, and the person would turn the spindle to make thread from the flax. Well, distaff was also used as a pejorative word in reference to a woman who did common menial work, a woman who wasn't really very nice, a woman who was crude and ugly and coarse and common. So a distaff was a tool used in the textile trade, but it was also used as a word to describe a woman who was very unkind. A distaff. So anyway, the story begins many, many years ago. There was a king and a queen who had everything money could buy and everything money couldn't buy. They had health, they had wealth, they had friends and family, they had a beautiful, beautiful castle, they had devoted servants who were at their beck and call. But what they didn't have was a child, and they wanted so much to have a child. They did everything they could to have a child. They consulted magicians and sorcerers and doctors and everybody. They just could not conceive a child. It was the thing they missed in life more than anything else. Well, lo and behold, one day the queen was swimming in the pond inside the walls of the castle, and a frog emerged on the bank of the lake where she was swimming and said, "I promise you, within 1 year, you will give birth to a child. You will give birth to a child." So, lo and behold, she had a child. A beautiful, beautiful child they called Rose. And when the child was born, the king wanted to summon to the castle the most wise women in the entire kingdom to come and have a big party to celebrate the arrival of the child. There were 13 of these women, but they only had place settings for 12. So he invited 12 women to come and to celebrate the birth of Rose. During the dinner, each of the wise women stood and bestowed a blessing upon the child. The blessing of happiness, the blessing of love, the blessing of prosperity, the blessing of health, etc. And finally, the woman who was number 12 got up to speak, and there was a big opening of the doors and a rush into the room of the 13th woman who wasn't invited. And she said, "Cursed be this child. When this child reaches her 15th year, she will prick her finger on a spindle, and she will die." And she left the room. Well, the guests and the king and the queen were all very, very surprised to hear this. But the 12th wise woman stood and said, "I know this woman. She has enormous power. I can't remove what she said will pass, but I can change it a little bit. This girl will not die. She will go to sleep for a long, long time, but she won't die. But still we must protect her and realize that she is in danger." Well, the king and queen, being who they were, didn't really take much wisdom in what they heard at this party. Our daughter, this beautiful girl, this could never happen to her. And she grew up to be a very lovely young lady. She was very talented, very gracious, very smart, very beautiful. To know her was to love her. And the prophecy that the king and queen learned at the dinner that night just sort of went out the window. They just thought, how could anybody larger than life than our daughter Rose be befallen by such evil? They pretty much forgot about it. Well, anyway, on the child's 15th birthday, the king and queen happened to be out of town, and like any teenager, curious, Rose began looking around the castle, opening closets and doors and windows, and she happened to notice that there was a staircase that led to a tower she'd never been to before. And up in the tower was an old woman with a distaff and a spindle, something she'd never seen before. Mind you, Rose was of aristocracy. They didn't see things like this. This was what the common working people did, not the aristocracy. So she went up and touched the spindle. What is this? And then she went to sleep. And when she went to sleep, not only did she go to sleep, but the entire castle went to sleep. The flies on the wall remained on the wall. The horses and the hounds, just for hunting, all laid down in the yard. And the king and queen, who had been out on an outing, entered the chamber of their thrones and fell down. And the whole castle just went to sleep for many, many, many years. Well, there were some very brave, very, very interesting young men outside who believed that they had the skills and the prowess to penetrate that castle and to unlock the mystery. But when they would do that and try to climb the castle wall, they were surrounded by briars. And the briars encased them in such a way they couldn't escape. And they died very agonizing deaths of hunger and thirst and cold and exposure. Well, beautiful Rose, who lived in the castle, got the name Briar Rose, because these briars would surround these young men who would try to rescue her from her deep sleep. Well, this went on for many, many years, until one day a young man, many years later, was walking by the castle, and he happened to talk to an old man and said, you know, I heard there's a very beautiful woman, a girl who lives in there, and that she died a very tragic death, and that many men died. And this old man said, oh, yeah, my grandfather told me about that. Yeah, this young girl died, and a lot of men tried to get in there to rescue her and to unlock the mystery, and they all got killed. It's really kind of old hat. I wouldn't recommend going in there if I were you. There are a lot of guys who died, and I don't want that to happen to you. But this young man thought, well, what does this old man know? Not probably know any more than I know. I'm going to try it anyway. So he began to climb the wall, and by golly, what happened was the briars that assaulted the former young men had turned to flowers. And he just climbed the flowers, climbed over the wall, and when he walked in, he saw the dogs and the horses lying in the yard. He walked into the castle, he saw the flies on the wall. He even saw where there was a fire in the fireplace. There was no fire. There were just logs that had been partially burned, but no fire. He went to the kitchen and he saw a woman with her hand raised to strike a boy who was her helper, who hadn't helped her the way she wanted to. He was very, very taken aback as to what had happened. So he thought, I've seen so many things, but I haven't met this fair maiden named Rose. I want to see where she is. So he prowled around the castle for a few hours, and when he ascended the staircase that she ascended 100 years before, he saw her. And he said, Rose? No response. He pinched her cheek. No response. He got a little water and dribbled it on her. No response. What do I got to do? What do I got to do to wake her up? Well, he said, she's so beautiful. I want to kiss her. And when he kissed her, she woke up. This was the 100th anniversary of her death. He kissed her, and after he kissed her, the flies on the wall began flying around, the dogs and the horses in the yard rose up. The woman in the kitchen who was about to strike the boy, struck the boy, and he let out a mighty yelp. And the king and queen, who had fallen a few yards from their throne, woke up, and everybody was reunited. The young man and bride Rose were married, had a very lovely ceremony, and they lived a very, very healthy, very, very good life after that. End of story.